Can you believe that even military ships in our world don't follow traffic rules? Yes, you heard it right, not drivers of cars, but sailors driving military ships. Recently, the US military complained that their ships were stopped by the Chinese Navy while sailing in the Taiwan Strait. The US military claimed that the Chinese ships violated international maritime traffic rules and unsafe navigation. This reminds me of drivers who don't use turn signals while driving. It seems that whether on land or at sea, we can always find some thrill-seeking drivers. I heard that the US and Chinese military ships were only 150 yards, 137 meters, apart recently. Doesn't it sound like a scene from an action movie? Two massive warships chasing each other on the high seas, like a maritime version of Fast and Furious. Do you know what the Pentagon is most worried about right now? It's not climate change or vaccination rates, but the increasing number of Chinese military air and sea intercepts. This is one of the most intense confrontations between the US and China this year, but to me, it seems like a large-scale road movie on the sea and in the air. The only difference is that the main characters are warships and planes. Meanwhile, the actors in this movie are becoming more and more real. This reminds me of Mother's Day when I was a child. My mother asked me why I didn't give her a gift, and I said, "Mom, your gift is increasing every day, and that's my love for you." It looks like the Chinese military feels the same way, and their love for the Pentagon is growing day by day, to the point where even the US is getting fed up. There is a big pie called Chinese real estate, and its ingredients are land revenue. This pie has been made for decades. The government's finances are like the person who has been eating this pie all along. But now, the pie is finally finished, and there is no new dough in the oven because the real estate industry is no longer as popular as it used to be. Those greedy people started blaming the chef because they were hungry. But the problem is, weren't they blaming the real estate developers who built so many houses? Aren't those developers the chefs? Now, which real estate company has a good reputation? It's like borrowing money from a friend and not paying it back, and then the friend's friends find out, and you become the culprit of the entire friend circle. Real estate companies dig into your pockets every day. How can you like them? We have an old saying, the richest man does come from real estate. Look, China's richest people are all from real estate, but in my opinion, these rich people are all problematic. For example, Xu Jiayan and Wang Jianlin have debt ratios higher than my fear of seeing my mother's slippers. Their debt ratio is so high that it can be considered a threat to national security. Now it seems that this richest person doesn't seem to have any value. Does this not show a problem? Sometimes, your wealth cannot measure your value, especially when your wealth comes from a market on the verge of collapse. Hello everyone, I am your news anchor Yali. We provide you with a one-stop service for China-related news every day. On the afternoon of June 3rd, in front of the Chinese embassy in Washington, people shouted slogans such as, "Never forget June 4th, long live democracy," to commemorate the democratic movement and the victims of the June 4th incident 34 years ago. Mourning and commemoration activities have been held here for 34 years. Participants said that the biggest difference this year is seeing more young people participate. From last year's Chinese blank paper movement to the young people at today's commemorative event, the younger generation is gradually awakening. On the 34th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square incident, the Chinese Democracy Academy Association and other civic groups held a mourning event at the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall on the evening of June 4th. Taiwan is one of the few places in the Chinese community where public mourning for June 4th is allowed. After being suppressed by Beijing and Hong Kong and no longer able to speak out for the June 4th incident, Taiwan is regarded as the only place in the Chinese region where public mourning for June 4th still exists. According to statistics, nearly 2,500 people attended the June 4th evening party at the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall in Taipei, including Hong Kong people, Tibetans, Uyghurs, and even Ukrainians. They held candles and mourned the victims of June 4th together. People erected a rebuilt national mourning pillar sculpture on the square and lit candles on the ground to form 8,964. In addition to Taiwan, commemorative events were also held on June 4th in cities such as Sydney, London, New York, and Berlin. People in Sydney, Australia held a June 4th commemorative event in front of the City Hall on June 4th. Feng Changyi, an associate professor at the University of Technology Sydney, said that the message of this event is that China's freedom fighters are still struggling and that freedom and democracy must be achieved in China. Similar events were held in more than 30 cities in North America, Europe, and Asia on June 4th. On June 4th, several members of the Tiananmen Mothers Group were under police surveillance as they visited the Wan'an Cemetery in Beijing to commemorate the deceased. Tiananmen Square was tightly sealed off, and the Hong Kong police were on high alert. The large-scale candlelight vigil that was previously held in Victoria Park has been replaced by a 3-day food market event. At the same time, a large number of police officers were stationed and patrolling in the Causeway Bay area. The police set up tents outside the Causeway Bay MTR station to search passers-by. 2 Chinese-made Tiger armored vehicles were parked outside Victoria Park and Sogo department store. A total of 31 people were detained over the 2 days, with 5 people arrested, including 67-year-old activist Alexandra Wang, also known as Grandma Wang, Democratic activist Li Chuk-yan, and 2 Taiwan University graduate students, Liu Jiayi and Kuo Chia-yi. The Taiwan University Graduate Student Association publicly condemned the Hong Kong police and called for the release of Liu Jiayi on the afternoon of June 4th at the Freedom Square of the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall, showing that the city's freedom of speech is further shrinking. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen shared the recent Guizhou subway singing event on Facebook, hoping that young people in China will one day be able to sing freely. According to Taiwan's central news agency, many young people sang, "Those without dreams are the saddest," and sang, "I don't want to live underground," at the recent Guizhou subway singing event. On June 3, the eve of the 34th anniversary of June 4, a woman waved the American flag and slogans from a high place and sprinkled excerpts from the Declaration of Independence outside the May Day concert at the Bird's Nest National Stadium in Beijing. However, the woman was later stopped by security personnel who arrived at the scene. Weibo has designated the May Day concert and the Bird's Nest as sensitive words. According to a test by China Digital Times, on June 3, only content posted by verified users was visible in Weibo posts containing related sensitive words, and content posted by ordinary users was not visible. The Linglong Pagoda has been designated as a prohibited word, and search results have been almost completely cleared. The Declaration of Independence can only be seen in content posted by Blue V users, and all search results are less than 40. Some commenters believe that completely erasing the memory of the June 4 incident in Hong Kong is actually extremely difficult. However, in the past 2 or 3 years, the state's high pressure has reached a considerable level, hindering discussions of the June 4 incident and affecting collective memory. Taiwanese scholar Wu Ju-ren believes that although the public memory of the June 4 incident in Hong Kong is disappearing, this disappearance does not mean that the memory has really been erased, because memory is a very subtle thing. The commemoration of the June 4 incident by overseas Hong Kong people is a practice that preserves Hong Kong's national traditional memory and identity. This is a long struggle that has just begun. The U.S. military issued a statement regarding the incident where a Chinese Navy ship intercepted a U.S. warship passing through the Taiwan Strait, stating that the Chinese Navy ship violated international maritime rules and engaged in unsafe navigation, with the two ships being only 150 yards, 137 meters, apart at the closest point. A Canadian Navy colonel accused the Chinese Navy of intentionally cutting into the path of U.S. and Canadian warships, almost causing a collision. Last week, a Chinese fighter jet flew to within 400 feet of the nose of a U.S. reconnaissance plane, which the U.S. military called an unnecessary provocation. This is one of the most intense confrontations between the U.S. and Chinese militaries this year, and the Pentagon is increasingly concerned about the alarming increase in dangerous air and sea intercepts by what it calls the Chinese military. On June 3, the U.S. State Department announced that Kurt Campbell, the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, and Laura Rosenberger, the newly appointed Senior Director for China and Taiwan Affairs at the White House National Security Council, will visit Beijing from June 4 to 10 and hold talks with Chinese officials on bilateral relations. This is another visit by a high-level U.S. official in charge of China affairs to China after CIA Director William Burns' secret visit to Beijing last month. The United States has sent a series of high-level officials to visit Beijing to seek to improve U.S.-China relations in the absence of high-level exchanges. How will President Biden demonstrate a policy towards China that combines both hard and soft approaches? U.S. Defense Secretary Austin said in Singapore that a conflict in the Taiwan Strait would be catastrophic. The interruption of military communication channels between the U.S. and China poses a great risk. In response to U.S. Defense Secretary Austin's criticism of China's refusal to engage in crisis management dialogue between the two militaries, China countered that it was a series of erroneous words and actions by the U.S. that did not create conditions for communication and exchanges between the two militaries. China's defense minister stated at the Shangri-La dialogue that if there were a fierce conflict between China and the U.S., it would be unbearable for the world, and mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation are the way for China and the U.S. to coexist. The world is wide enough to accommodate the common development of China, the U.S., and other countries in the region. However, he emphasized that China will not tolerate any provocation on the Taiwan issue. Li Shangfu did not name the Asia-Pacific NATO, and Singapore's defense minister Ng Eng-hen said that both the U.S. and Chinese defense ministers expressed their hope to restore the original dialogue mechanism during their separate conversations with him. Japan's defense minister held talks with China's defense minister and others in Singapore. A former Chinese ambassador to the U.S. said that the U.S. must stop its military deployments on China's doorstep. Chinese ambassador to France Liu She's recent comments on the ineffective legal status of the former Soviet republics sparked controversy. On June 3, the Chinese embassy in France published an interview with Liu by French media, in which he stated that his remarks were personal views and not in conflict with China's foreign policy. He criticized the excessive reaction to his remarks and accused TV stations of violating journalistic ethics by inviting people to criticize and condemn him. The key issue in the debate was not whether his comments were right or wrong, but whether there was freedom of speech in public debates on TV, which should be guaranteed. According to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Tesla CEO Elon Musk expressed opposition to the decoupling of the world's two largest economies during a meeting with Chinese officials. In the meeting on Tuesday, Qin Gang compared China-US relations to driving a Tesla, saying that it is necessary to steer the steering wheel, brake in time to avoid dangerous driving, and be good at stepping on the accelerator. German media recently revealed that some former German pilots were recruited by companies in South Africa and New Zealand and then sent to China to train fighter pilots. German security officials believe that the pilots may have transmitted military knowledge and confidential combat tactics. The chairman of the Parliamentary Defense Committee said that it is absurd that former Air Force soldiers are training fighter pilots in China after retiring, and that this is unacceptable. In recent weeks, India and China have expelled each other's journalists, almost severing media contacts between the two countries. The expulsion of journalists has intensified tensions between India and China, reducing communication and predictability between these two nuclear-armed neighbors. The United States has requested a meeting of the United Nations Security Council on North Korea's launch of a military reconnaissance satellite. On June 4, Kim Yo-jong, the sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, said that the Security Council's meeting on North Korea's satellite launch showed that the Security Council accepted the U.S.'s robbery request and acted as its political appendage. North Korea will never recognize the UN's sanctions. Previously, China said at the United Nations that the Security Council should promote de-escalation rather than blame one party. UK Defense Secretary Wallace said that in addition to China, Russia's behavior in the Pacific region is also aggressive. As an expert in disrupting infrastructure operations, Russia has the ability, intention, and has already attacked other countries. Zelensky is ready to counterattack and believes that China is stronger than Russia and should restrain Putin. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, Zelensky said that Ukraine is now ready to launch the long-awaited counterattack, but warned that this may take some time. KMT presidential candidate and new Taipei City Mayor Hu Yuyi said that former Vice President of Taiwan, Vincent Su, shared many views based on his extensive experience in economics and diplomacy, and believed that cross-strait relations must be based on the principles of equality and dignity to achieve peace and prosperity across the Taiwan Strait, and should not be manipulated by political ideology. Taiwan's political arena has been hit by the #MeToo movement, with accusations of sexual harassment against blue and green political figures, including Wang Dan. China's Belt and Road Initiative has brought a large amount of investment to Papua New Guinea, including a $400 million capital complex with cinemas, hotels, apartments, and restaurants. However, local people do not feel the benefits because local labor is excluded, and Chinese investors bring their own employees. The initiator of the Tear Down the Wall movement, Chao Shin-shin, has gone missing in Laos, suspected of being involved in cross-border law enforcement by Chinese public security officials. The Economist analysis suggests that low inflation should make it easier for the Chinese government to stimulate the economy compared to other countries, but the Chinese government still has other concerns. China's manufacturing activity has shrunk for the second consecutive month, and the growth of the service industry has slowed. These latest signs indicate that China's growth momentum after reopening is difficult to sustain. Economists have significantly lowered their expectations for China's economic growth, citing a faster-than-expected weakening of housing demand and consumption. As the brief excitement brought by the reopening gradually fades, potential problems accumulated over many years in the Chinese economy are resurfacing. The prosperity of the real estate market and excessive government investment are a thing of the past. Households and local governments are burdened by huge debts. The 2023 FIBA Hall of Fame list was announced, and Yao Ming, the chairman of the Chinese Basketball Association, was elected, becoming the third person from the Chinese basketball world to be inducted into the FIBA Hall of Fame. The Chinese Shenzhou 15 spacecraft landed, and 3 astronauts returned to the ground. China's first independently developed Beidou 3 global satellite navigation system has officially begun operations, showcasing China's growing space capabilities. For less than 200 yuan, you can fly from China to Thailand for 6 days and 5 nights, with accommodation and airfare included. Such tempting discounts are incredible. After China opened up outbound tourism in February this year, these low-cost tourism ads have sprung up like mushrooms, causing concerns about the return of zero-group fee tourism. That's today's news briefing. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like and share, and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next issue. Take care everyone.